Hi, this is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our Fridays with Sandy segment on Facebook Live. There's Sandy Kreisberg, straight from Boston, aka HBSGuru. And we have from Scotland, Edinburgh, in fact, Sagnik McCordy, who
Hi.
is applying to both London Business School and IESE in Spain. Welcome.
Hi.
Now, Sandy, this is your turn. You're going to do another mock interview, and this is the
We're
season
going
of
to do a
interviews.
general
So,
mock interview.
bingo.
Sagnak is an interesting volunteer. He works in jobs that are technical, as many of our applicants do. And this would be a typical, what I'm going to do with him is a very typical mock interview with someone who works, as he does, for a chemical company, and before that worked for big oil. And this will be the kind of interview you would get, particularly the big oil part. There are a lot of applicants from, what it used to be the big 3 or 4, whatever they are, however many are left. So, Sagnik, with your permission, let's get right into it, okay?
Sure.
Okay, the first interview question frequently is, hi, just tell me about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sagnik. I'm originally from India, but I've lived in the UK for the last 10 years. I studied here and I've worked here in the last 5 years. I'm an electrical engineer by discipline. I've worked in oil, gas, and chemicals in the last 6 years across different functions. I studied at the University of Sheffield, and outside the classroom, I'm actually more interesting than my professional side, because I try to keep myself active through a lot of fundraising challenges, like trekking to Jordan, doing scuba diving, or going up Mount Kilimanjaro. And I also have a lot of interests such as
Okay, good.
reading, photography,
Good.
and Scotch whiskey.
As we say with everybody, the mistake people make is talking too much. Just cut it off. You did a great job. You didn't get lost, and just go. That's it. The problem of asking the question is the interviewers. Now they usually interrupt you. Another question they might say is, what do you want your classmates? I notice you're based in Scotland. What do you want your classmates to know about Scotland?
The best whiskey in the world is made here. So, I am a great lover of whiskey. I have a lot of knowledge on Scotch whiskey. So if you guys ever want to go do a whiskey tasting with me, more than happy to
Good.
lead you on.
That's a good answer. What else?
I'm not showing you at the moment, but on the left here near my window, I have
got it. What else do you want them to know about Scotland? That was a great answer. What else do you want them to know?
Something I often use for Scotland is brutally beautiful. So the landscape in Scotland is breathtaking, and it's amazing. And I've done loads of road trips, but it's so brutal because the weather is just horrible.
Do some great drinking and looking at the fabulous scenery. Suppose you
Yeah.
wanted to start a business. What might you want to know?
Suppose you want to start a business in Scotland. I think the thing that Scotland sells quite a bit is their culture. And I think it's still quite untapped because people have only started to come in now as tourists, and we see that in Edinburgh year after year. But the Highlands are still kind of not as well connected. So I think there's a business opportunity there to help people to go around. I mean, I do that for my friends who crash at mine, and I take them out for a drive. But you could do that,
you know. If you need a local partner, if there are regulations about starting a business, stuff like that.
That's a good question, and the honest answer is I don't know.
Okay,
but I think post-Brexit, I would say.
No reason you should. Yeah,
Right.
sometimes if you come from if you come from countries that are not frequent flyers, they often, this is for the general folks out there, they often ask you, what do you want your classmates to know about X country? And it's helpful if your answer to that has a little bit of economics behind it.
Right.
Developing country, opportunities are here and there. There's great whiskey. There's great scenery. Those were good answers. They might get behind that and say, how does it relate to the UK? What's going on there, etc. Okay, let's move along. Tell me about your decision to go to the University of Sheffield?
Yeah, I think Sheffield, the reason I picked Sheffield was purely because they were very, very strong on their research in the engineering department.
Where'd you go to high school?
New Delhi.
So starting in New Delhi, tell me, so you made your decision as a high school senior in New Delhi?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's this question about your decision to go to college, very common. The model answer is, I went to high school in X.
Right.
People at my high school looked at this and this. People often, okay, now this is an odd choice, so they're gonna drill down on this. Okay, so with that in mind, try answering.
Okay, so I went to high school in New Delhi. I was quite certain I wanted to be.
How did Sheffield get on your radar?
Um,
Now is
well,
interview a lot, which is another
right.
mode of interviewing. How did it get on your radar?
Well, Sheffield is where the manufacturing industry started. So engineering and the industry revolution in the UK started in Sheffield. It's known as the Steel City.
Yeah, man, I'm asking a real question here. You're a high school student in New Delhi. You're making a choice to go to college. I like baseball. Baseball started in Cooperstown, New York. That didn't impact my college decision, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I wanted to come to the UK. So when you apply to the UK as an undergraduate, well, they didn't need the SATs. My school grades were good enough for them. So that is the honest answer, to be honest. Because I didn't want to take in India, if you don't know, you have to take a lot of entrance exams to get into engineering colleges, and they're quite hard. And
Yes.
apart from the fact that it's exacerbated by the competition.
Okay. But by combination of both me and you and a little bit of bad karma, we're going down a bad road here.
Right.
This ain't helping anybody. You know, general tip, you know, don't try and explain everything.
Okay.
What you should do to prepare for for a real interview is be aware of the most common questions. They're out there, they're on the internet, and try and have real simple answers for that.
Sure.
I was in my high school, X% of kids went to school abroad. I was interested. I've always loved England. I thought it would be a great opportunity to go there. I started researching schools in the UK. Sheffield got on my radar, blah, blah, blah. So try the answer.
Right. So one thing, can I just say, Sandy, is that
Sure.
obviously keeping LBS in mind, and it's interesting, your point is absolutely right. But when I've spoken to UK schools, and nobody's given me that question because Sheffield is a common name here, so you don't really sort of say why do you went to Sheffield,
Yeah, okay.
especially for engineering. But I take your point. That's absolutely fair.
We're also helping people in general.
Of course, of course.
So give me the answer from your point of view.
So I would say that
in New Delhi.
I was quite certain I wanted to be an engineer. Engineering colleges in India have the problem of being too theoretically heavy, so I wanted to go abroad where the learning is more practical.
Stop.
UK.
Okay, my BS flag is flying here.
Right.
I mean, that just strikes me as not a real motive, that high school people distinguish between theoretical and applied engineering. The way to, and I know what your problem is. The way for you to answer this question is, I was interested in engineering. There are great engineering schools in India. I wanted to study abroad. The engineering schools abroad were attractive. I knew people who had done engineering in the UK. To be honest, I did apply to some of the leading Indian engineering schools, and they made my decision easier by.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. That's actually true. So
of course it is. But everybody knows.
Just a personal anecdote there, and maybe it's a bit long story, but My dad was doing his PhD at IIT, which is one of the best sort of engineering colleges in India. And one of his professors, although he's not engineering, but his professors advised me to go abroad rather than come to IIT. That was quite interesting,
You
just
could
as a
mention
personal
that too.
anecdote.
You go, another piece of information. I knew a professor at an IIT. He said, you know, there's a lot to be said for going to school abroad. And
Okay,
then the IIT made my decision easier by not accepting me. Okay.
cool. That's a very good answer. Thank you very much.
They are, I say this every week, and I'm going to say it every week. They can swallow you not getting into IIT. They've decided to interview you. What they'll have less trouble, what they'll have more trouble swallowing is just a kind of phony answer. That's the whole purpose of the interview. Okay, classic, I'm gonna skip college because I want to get to your work.
Okay.
Could you tell me what your current company is and what they do?
Yeah, so my current company is called Enios. They are one of the top 10 chemical manufacturing companies in the world. And well, nowadays they're expanding into all sorts. So they're going to make a new car company, and they're also going into upstream oil and gas.
Who are their competitors?
BP Chemicals will be an obvious answer, and they'll have Dow, they'll have BASF, Exxon Chemicals or Exxon Downstream.
Okay, what do you do?
So
I
my
noticed your
title.
resume says assets assurance, electrical engineer. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with it either, so I'll try and simplify it. It's
Me too.
basically I'm an internal consultant and a subject matter expert when it comes to electrical engineering, because of my diverse electrical engineering background previous to Enios.
Okay, let's make this, bring it home to me. Tell me 3 things you've done in the past year.
Okay, cool. So one thing that I've done is I've developed a new internal audit sort of format for
Okay, I
auditing
noticed that in your resume. Audit of what?
of explosion protection devices. So in an environment that we work in, a small ignition could cause an explosion. So if you remember Texas City,
Yeah.
Macondo, so all of those
I
things.
understand that part. The part I don't understand is the audit part.
So we are legally required to inspect our personal protective devices. So for example, the phones we use, the mobile phones we use on site or on plant have certain protections on them, and those protections need to be inspected at a sort of set frequency. So you have to do that.
Yeah, I
But
understand that. And that's what you do?
that's no, so I can do the inspections, but if you imagine there are about 3,000 pieces of equipment like that that need to be inspected. Now, the admin work that goes with it, the risk calculation that goes with it, because obviously you find defects, so you have to quantify it to help
Yeah,
managers who are not
stop.
engineering to understand.
How you doing?
I think I'm trying to explain a lot, but I don't know how to simplify that that answer, because I have to explain
You
what an
are, you are
explosion protection device is.
you are correct. We don't care about explosion detection devices. You go, what I do is keep track of a lot of things that we're required to keep track of by law. These include any item that can issue a spark, our safety equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So my role as auditor of those dangerous devices includes doing 1 and 2.
Right.
You gotta, this is important for you. It's important for anyone being interviewed. You've got to be willing to oversimplify.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I struggle to oversimplify some of the things I
Well,
do because people
as
don't
I
know.
keep saying, you're the fish in the water. You know, you live it, you breathe it. You don't know what an outsider views it as. Okay, but let me finish up with this. What does that mean to audit? So other people do the audits?
Yes, but I've developed the audit plan and developed the KPIs for it. So key process indicators, key performance indicators for it.
And how does your electrical engineering background figure into that?
Well, it has to, because I have to take a call on the defect and say whether that's an acceptable risk or not. So I have to take a call. I have to extrapolate my field knowledge to 2,000 devices and say, well, where is the exact risk? You know, so moving from the leaves from the trees, that's what they say. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where the problem lies.
Here's another question they often ask. Tell me what you did yesterday or last week. Let me tell you how to answer this. Don't think about what you did yesterday or last week. Think about saying something that is accurate and close enough for government work and easily explainable. Get it?
Okay. So actually, I am doing it at the moment because the cycle's there. So I am chasing people to finish up their inspections, and so that I can put the KPI numbers on board for my director to see where we are
Okay.
before we go up in front of the external auditor.
This is the part of my job where I bug people.
Yeah,
That's a good
very
answer.
nicely.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay. Here are some very typical questions. What are you good at this job?
Somebody said to me the other day, for people skills alone, I should be given an award. So I think people skills comes into it a lot more than anything else. The technical side is fine.
Who do you supervise?
So directly, I have one graduate engineer and one support specialist who work for me directly. But other than that, I don't really supervise anyone. And that's the challenge, because as an internal consultant, you have to influence people to do things for you rather
Very
than
good.
order them to do it for you.
Tell me two examples of situations where you've influenced people without being the formal leader, which what you're saying is the case.
I'll take an example. Last year, I developed another sort of dashboard for uninterruptible power systems. Now, leaving aside the technical side, I have to translate what happens in the field.
Get right to
So
the people.
what happens in the so
This is just a general tip. If the question is, tell me an example of someone you've influenced. A great way to start is, last week I influenced Joe Blow, who is a whatever. And the problem with Joe Blow was he wanted to do it this way, and I had to influence him. And I did it through understanding what his point was, bringing in other people into the conversation, and asking for his help. Get it?
Okay. Yeah. So last week I influenced.
That's a good template for this answer for anyone. It's a very common question. That's a good answer for how do you lead as well.
So last week I influenced two sides. One was the ops director of Ineos Chemicals to shell out some money to improve our power systems, to do a study into it. He obviously didn't want to spend any money on it. So I did that
let's stop the clock there. What was this
Yep.
situation? Who's the ops director, and what was your proposal?
So my proposal was to develop a risk criticality matrix for our power systems to understand, where the problem actually lies. So generically, just to find out where the risks are. He didn't.
You were going to develop that. What do you got now? That's doing.
We don't have a model to understand the technical risk for power systems. It's one of those things you plug and play and you forget about it. But when it's 20 years old, 30 years old, it starts to break down. And when the complex is 50 years old, you have to then decide where you want to spend your money. So what I had to convince him and say, if you want to prevent failures in the future, that you're going to end up spending a few million quid a day in terms of downtime.
Okay, I got it. General advice. This is a classic example. I had to convince a supervisor to spend money on upgrading devices. It's a classic battle. That's what you did, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Close enough for interview.
Yeah, close enough for interview. Close enough for interview. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What? Tell me about your job before this.
Before that, I was a planning engineer for BP. and that was I was multidisciplinary. I wasn't just electrical, and in that case,
What's the,
I
okay, this is a very common question. Compare the culture at BP and
Ineos.
any other.
So I'll talk about the organizational structure. So BP is very pyramidal, very hierarchical, so it goes up. Whereas Ineos is very flat, so not a lot of bosses, more
How
team
come?
people. They just like to keep it very, very close, whereas BP loves their hierarchical structure. So BP is a functional organization, they'd like to call it, but they're sort of divided in functions, whereas
Okay,
Ineos
I've
doesn't have
heard
function.
BP, I take it as a huge organization. How does
It
Ineos,
is, yeah.
how does Ineos, so that the fact that they have a major hierarchy doesn't surprise me. How does Ineos operate in a flat environment? How do they get away with it?
They operate with individual businesses. So, for example, the complex I work in, there are 3 Ineos businesses that we're legally completely different entities. So they keep themselves segregated like that, and there's an executive committee at the head, and Jim Ratcliffe, who's the billionaire owner, he keeps it very, very close to his heart and manages each business individually.
Okay, that answer could be, is Ineos privately owned?
It is.
Okay, that's an important difference right there.
Right.
It's much easier for a private owned company to create a culture. A lot of
Yep.
BP culture is dictated by other things. Which company do you enjoy working for more? These are very common questions. These are absolutely frequent flyer questions.
I would say I'm enjoying my current role, and so by that logic, I'm enjoying Ineos. The reason I enjoy my current role, and I just explained that, because Ineos is so flat, I can influence a lot more people, whereas in BP, you have to
Good.
go up the chain, up the chain,
Yeah.
up the chain, and then influence people.
That's a perfect answer. Okay, one big thing. I enjoyed working at BP. Ineos, flat culture. I enjoy it a lot more. It really, a lot more room for my own initiative. I can get things done quicker, et cetera, et cetera. Why did you join BP out of college? This is a question everybody should have an answer to. Why did you take your first job?
Well, again, I've always been very clear I wanted to work in the energy industry, and BP's graduate development program was one of the best in the UK, and it was so global,
So
and it was
tell
so
me
well
about, this
structured.
was a rotational leadership program?
Kind of, yeah, for graduate level, for entry level, yeah. So it's a 3-year program, and ideally you do either 2 roles or 3 roles in your 3 years, and they try and give you enough breadth in the BP world as you can get, and then you choose one track and you go with it,
Yeah.
or it's driven by business basically.
Tell me, during that rotational program, tell me 2 things you discovered about yourself that you're good at and 2 things that need improvement.
I'll start with the improvement. I think when I joined BP, I was very impatient. And I think it was BP, I'm not going to say it's BP's fault, but the program had so much to offer that I was very impatient to sort of get everything in my 3 years. And secondly, was in that impatience, maybe I didn't think about my non-verbal behaviors as much, and I think they're very important. And by non-verbal behaviors, I mean, your body language when you're speaking to people, when you're sort of approaching people. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but that impatience came out, and sometimes senior managers may not like that, or sometimes they like it.
This is a flabby answer that if you were preparing for interviews, you should have a checklist of 3 things you learned, 3 things you could improve upon, 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses. You really have to bat them out.
Right.
General info. What you're doing is you're thinking out loud.
Okay.
It's almost like we're preparing an answer, but you were getting lost. Okay, we're going to conclude here with this important question. Why do you want an MBA?
I want to grow in the energy industry, but not just as an engineer. I want to grow beyond the engineering side of things. So the MBA is a great opportunity.
What job would you want your first summer?
My first summer would be to go back to an energy industry company. So go back to an energy conglomerate, whether it's BP or somebody else equivalent to it, but in a different function. So not as an
Where do
engineer.
you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years? And
Yeah. So
name people who are role models for you at those steps.
Jim Ratcliffe is a role model, actually, and I'm not saying it because I work for his company, but he did the same trajectory. He was an engineer before, went to LBS, came out of LBS, started his own company, which is INEOS today. It's now growing arms and legs into everywhere, and is becoming a big energy company.
That's not what
So
you said. He's an entrepreneur. You said you wanted to be more than an engineer.
correct. So I want to come back to the energy industry in a different function.
Your instinct was good. He was a good example. I'm just breaking your nuts. My guess is most interviewers wouldn't be that sharp, but it does help for the folks out there to have it, to answer, what do you want to do after business school? What do you want to do in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 12 years? And to have actual people that you can allude to. The fact that you had this guy and he has an MBA, those are great. Okay.
Yep.
Let's finish off here. I think we're running. We may be done. What? Tell me something that's not in your application that would surprise me. Famous oddball question.
That's not in the you mean in my CV at the moment?
Well, your CV, but in a real interview, they would say your entire application.
I'm a very good cook.
Good.
And I have a big passion for cooking.
Great answer. Great answer. What would you do if you don't get an MBA?
I think I'd probably then pursue a master's in finance, probably, because that's the closest thing that I can get after an MBA, I think. Although I'm not looking at master's in finance because it's too siloed. I don't want a specific degree, and that's why I'm choosing the MBA.
Good. Program note here, John. Are we out of time or?
We are out of time. I think this is really terrific.
Good. Segnick, you were terrific. Thank you. You're a great sport. And
thank you very much.
You're pretty good at this.
And good luck to you.
Thanks.
And good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
We are rooting for you. We hope you get into one of those two schools, if not both.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
All right, Sandy, thank you.
Okay, John, I'm leaving the meeting here.
All righty. Well, this is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Join us next Friday at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Fridays with Sandy.
Do you know who we're having?
I hope that we're having a young lady who should be really terrific next week as well.
Right.
And you know,
covering all the aspects of interviews here.
Exactly.
This was a typical interview of a guy working on an oil rig or with a major oil company or a big chemical company.
Yeah,
absolutely
very good.
Classic interview. Okay, John, hasta la vista. Have a nice weekend. Happy Easter.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah,
Happy Easter. And enjoy your ride through the countryside of Scotland this weekend.
Will do.
Very exciting.
I'll send pictures. Bye.